Alright guys, it's been a while since I've done this, but I'm back. I don't know why it took me so long to get back to reading. But this is Genesis 41, and we're going to be going to 45 today. So let's get started, shall we? Pharaoh's dreams. Um, when 2 full years have passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, sleek and fat. God, I'm not good at stopping that. And they grazed among the reeds. After them, another 7 cows, ugly and gaunt, came out of the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then the Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then the Pharaoh woke up, and it had been a dream. In the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh once was angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was in there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly... Gosh, you know what? I'm muting you. And things turned out exactly as he'd interpreted for us." Accidentally turned on my flashlight. "I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before the Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'I had a dream, and no one could interpret it. But I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. I cannot do it.' Joseph replied to the Pharaoh, 'But God will give the Pharaoh the answer he desires.' Then the Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'In my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, when out of the river there came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, another 7 cows came up, scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after they ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They just looked as ugly as before. Then I woke up. In my dream, I saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me." Then Joseph said to the Pharaoh, "The dreams of the Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up after are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said, Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming through the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine follows will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in two forms is that the matter of has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. Now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man put in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of all these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of the Pharaoh, to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. The plan seemed good to the Pharaoh and to all of his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom the Spirit of God, who is in the Spirit of God?" The Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all of my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." So that last part just means they're equal, except for the Pharaoh has the bragging rights of being the Pharaoh. So Joseph in charge of Egypt. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in the robes of fine linen and put gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but without word no one will lift hand or foot in all Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah, and gave him Asnath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went through the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of the Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city he put food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sands in the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph, Asnath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh, I guess, and said, "It is because God has made me forget all my troubles and all my father's household." The second son he named Ephraim, and said, "It is because God made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine begun. Just as Joseph had said, there was a famine in all of the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then the Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you." When the famine has spread all over the whole world, or the whole country, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all of the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. There's nothing really too much to say about that. Like, there's no hidden meanings. It's kind of like directly telling you what's going on. So let's get to the next one. Genesis chapter 42. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at each other?" He continued. "I've heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us so that we may live and not die." Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with the others, because he was afraid that harm might come to him. So Israel's sons were among those who went to buy grain, for there was famine in the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed to him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he asked. "From the land of Canaan," they replied, "to buy food." Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." "No, my lord," they answered. "Your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies." "No," he said to them, "you have come to see where our land is unprotected." But they replied, "Your servants were 12 brothers, the son of one man, who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more." Joseph said to them, It is just as I told you. You are spies, and this is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of your number to get your brother. The rest of you will be kept in prison, so that your words may be tested to see if you are telling the truth. If you are not, then surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies. And he put them all in custody for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison, while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving household. But you must bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified, and that you may not die." This they proceed to do. They said to another, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come on us." Reuben replied, Didn't I tell you to not sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph could understand them, since he was using an interpreter. He turned away from them and began to weep, but then came back and spoke to them again. He had Simon taken from them and bound before their eyes. Joseph gave the orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. After this was done for them, they loaded the grain on the donkeys and left. At the place where they stopped for one night, one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey and saw his silver in the mouth of the sack. "My silver has been returned," he said to his brothers. "Here it is in my sack." Their hearts sank, and they turned to each other, trembling, and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told them all that had happened. They said, The man who is lord over the land spoke harshly to us and treated us as though we were spying on the land. But we said to him, "We are honest men. We are not spies. We were 12 brothers, sons of one father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in Canaan." Then the man who is lord of the land said to us, This is how I will know whether you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take food for your starving household and go. but bring your youngest brother to me, so I know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will give your brother back to you, and you could trade in the land." As they were emptying their sacks, there in each man's sack was his pouch of silver. When they and their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Then Father Jacob said to them, "You have deprived me of children. Joseph is no more, and Simon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin? Everything is against me." Then Reuben said to his father, "You may put both of my sons to death." Then Reuben said to his father, "You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back." But Jacob said, "My son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he's the only one left. If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray head. Down to the grave in sorrow." So in case you couldn't tell what I was saying when I was stuttering the whole time, Jacob is scared that Benjamin, his favorite son, is going to also die. Joseph was, I think, the original favorite, and then Benjamin is the new favorite because he's like the child or something. So he didn't want him to go, and they believe that Simon is also dead, or will be dead, or something. So Jacob says no. Reuben said, "Well, in order to do this and bring Simon back, we're going to need to take him with us so that we can get Simon back. But if something does happen to him on the way there, you can put death to both of my sons, personally." I know, kind of crazy, but I guess it's like, it's somewhat understandable, I guess, like, whatever. 43. Now the famine was still severe in the land. So when they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father had said to them, "Go back and buy us a little more food." But Judah said to him, "The man warned us solemnly, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. Because the man said to us, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you." Israel asked, "Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother?" They replied, "This man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living? He asked us. Do you have another brother? We simply answered his questions. How were we to know? He would say, bring your brother down here." Then Judah said to Israel, his father, "Send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him free here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it is, if we have not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice." Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them down there to the man as a gift. A little balm and a little honey, some spices and myrrh, some pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that was put back into the mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once. And may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. If I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved." So the men took the gifts and double the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men into my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told them and took the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to his house. They thought we were brought here because of the silver that was put back into our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys. So they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. "We beg your pardon, our lord," they said. "We came down here the first time to buy food, but the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks and each of us found his silver, the exact weight, in the mouth of his sack. So we've brought it back with us. We've also brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put the silver in our sacks." "It is all right," he said. "Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver. Then he brought Simon out to them. The steward took the men into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared the gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon, because they had heard that they were here to eat. That they were to eat there. When Joseph came home, they presented him the gifts they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. He asked them how they were, and then they said, How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?" They replied, "Your servant, our father, is still alive and well." They bowed down, prostrating themselves before him. Prostrating? I don't freaking know that word. Freaking stupid word. Looks similar to other words, and English is stupid and stupid. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one that you've told me about?" And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went to his private room and wept there. After he had washed his face, he came out, controlling himself, said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that was the detestable to Egyptians. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. When the portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's, so they feasted and drank freely with him. So Joseph is playing favoritism. A silver cup in a sack. So now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain." And he did just as Joseph said. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their ways with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, "Go after those men, and when you catch up with them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup of my master's drinks from, isn't this the cup my master drinks from, and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing that you have done.'" When he caught up with them, he repeated those words to them. But they said to him, "Why does my lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sack. So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house?" If any of your servants have found it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves." "Very well, then," he said. "Let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame." Each of them quickly lowered a sack to the ground and opened it. The steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. Then they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can find things out by divination?" "What can we say to my lord?" Judah replied. "What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup." But Joseph said, "Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you, go back to your father in peace." Then Judah went up to him and said, "Pardon your servant, my lord. Let me speak a word to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself." My lord asked his servants, "Do you have a father or a brother?" And we answered, we have an aged father, and there is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him." Then you said to your servants, "Bring him down to me so I can see him for myself." And we said to the Lord, "The boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, his father will die." But you told your servants, "Unless your youngest brother comes down here with you, you will not see my face again." When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what the Lord had said. Then our father said, "Go back and buy a little more food." But we said, "We cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us will we go. We cannot see that man's face unless our youngest brother is with us." Your servant, my father, said to us, "You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me." And I said, He has surely been torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery. So now, if the boy is not with us when we go back to tell your servant my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with a boy's life, sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow." Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, "If I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave, in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers." How can I go back to see my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come on my father. Again, nothing much to say. It's kind of all there. 45. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all of the attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him, because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his... Yeah, that's weird. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay.'" Well, it says don't, but don't delay. "You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children, and your grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong with it will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father about all the honor accorded me in Egypt and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly." Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept, and Benjamin embraced him, weeping. He kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterward, his brothers talked with him. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had come, Pharaoh and all of his officials were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, do this. Load your animals and return to the land of Canaan, and bring your father and families back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land." You are also directed to tell them, "Do this. Take some carts from Egypt for your children and your wives, and get your father to come. Never mind about your belongings, because the best of the Egypt will be yours." So the sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them carts as Pharaoh had commanded, and he also gave them provisions for their journey. To each of them he gave new clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver, and 5 sets of clothes. And this is what he sent to his father. 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with the grain and bread and other provisions for his journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they were leaving, he said to them, "Don't quarrel on the way." So they went up out of Egypt and came to their father's... That was weird. And came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is alive. In fact, he's ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned, and he did not believe them. But when they told him everything Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to carry him back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, "I am convinced. My son Joseph is still alive, and I will go see him before I die." I've always loved this story. There isn't too much to say about it. Like, I just read it all, and it's all there. You don't need to go, like, forward in the Bible or backwards in the Bible, because there's a lot of cross-referencing, but this story is all here. And I don't know, this story is kind of I don't know, it was a big part of my childhood. Like, this is the one that I grew up kind of focusing on. Just, I thought it was such an awesome story that this had happened. Like, Joseph was given the worst of the worst. He was sold by his own brothers. And then he was given a whole bunch of stuff. He was sold to a very rich person, and saw that with Joseph in charge of things, everything prospered. So he gave everything to Joseph, except for his wife. But then his wife got jealous and said, "Ooh, this man tried to have sex with me. Ooh, no, get him away." So then Potiphar was like, "Well, how could you do this to me? I told you, you have everything except for my wife." So then, he threw Joseph in jail. But even in jail, the head guard, or whatever the guy was, captain, he put Joseph in charge of a whole bunch of things, saw that it prospered, and then put him in charge of the whole prison. I think. It was whatever the captain was in charge of, Joseph was also in charge of. And saw that it prospered. Yet he was still a prisoner. He was in charge of all of that stuff, and it all prospered. And then the Pharaoh needed an interpreter. So he sent for Joseph, and he helped the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh was like, "All right, well, you seem to be like just the man for what you were talking about. So I will make you my equal, and you will rule over all of Egypt. But I will be greater than you only in name." So that means it's like having a company where Joseph would be 49% and the Pharaoh would be 51%. Therefore, they're almost equals, but the Pharaoh has more rights. Just like to say, "All right, you're out," and then Joseph would have to be kicked out, type of thing. Always love this story. It's just his family hated him for his gift and sold him. And then he was just given a whole bunch of stuff in return. God turned what his brothers have done out of jealousy and turned it into their saving grace. But yeah, that is it for this episode. God bless you all, and peace outro.